Hey guys, today we're diving into a story that spans 30 years in the life of one man. From the childhood home where the ghosts of a mass murderer still roamed the basement, to the deep woods where whispers called his name in the dark, to a basement office where the breath of the dead brushed against his ear. This isn't one ghost story. This is 10 of them, and they all happen to the same person. So before we get into it, take a second to like this video and subscribe to Asm or Horror, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I share here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love knowing you're out there in the dark with me. Now, let's begin the story of Kael, a man who grew up in Ashford, Minnesota, a town that the Mian community calls the City of Ghosts. His mother was a shaman. She kept the spirits locked out of their home on Elm Creek Road for 4 years, a home where a massacre had taken place nearly a century before. But when she left, the door between worlds swung open, and it never closed again. If you drove through Ashford on an autumn afternoon, you'd see a quiet little town that looks like it fell asleep sometime in the 1970s and never quite woke up. Red maples lining the streets, old wooden houses with wide porches, kids riding bikes on cracked sidewalks. The only coffee shop in town closes at 3. Ashford, Minnesota. A place where time moves slower than everywhere else. But if you asked anyone in the Mian community here, they'd tell you a very different story. My name is Kael. I was born and raised in Ashford. And the first thing I want you to know is this. That quiet little town you see. It's not quiet. It's never been quiet. Ashford is what the Mian people call the City of Ghosts. Not because we're superstitious, not because we like scaring children with ghost stories around the fire, but because here, those things, they're real. You'd hear stories from just about any Mian family in town. Old Mr. Lur on the east side used to talk about his old house. Every full moon, the sound of a baby crying would rise from the attic, even though he lived alone. The Chow family near Birchwood Lake swore they saw a woman walking on the water at 3 a.m. White dress, long black hair covering her face, moving slowly, so slowly, as if the surface of the lake was solid ground. And then there was the shelter home up on Westbrook Hill, a former juvenile detention center, abandoned since 1987 after a night security guard quit because he kept hearing children laughing from the empty cells. But those are other people's stories. My story starts with my mother. My mother was a shaman. In Mian culture, a shaman isn't a witch, isn't a quack, isn't some kind of fraud. A shaman is someone who stands between two worlds, the world of the living and the world of the dead. They can see things ordinary people can't see. They can speak to spirits, drive away dark forces, and most importantly, they can protect their families from things that lurk on the other side. My mother was one of the most powerful shamans I've ever known. Not because she said so. She was a deeply humble woman. But because of what I saw with my own eyes. I watched her sit before the altar all night, eyes shut, chanting in an ancient language that even I couldn't understand. I watched her lay her hands on children burning with unexplained fevers, and by morning they'd be running around like nothing ever happened. I watched her burn incense and walk circles through the house in the dead of night, whispering prayers that made the air in the room thicken and grow heavy, as if something was being forced out through the walls. My mother protected us. Always. And that's why, when my parents decided to buy the house on Elm Creek Road, my mother wasn't worried. I remember the first time we went to see it. A 2-story house, white paint, black roof, with a full basement underneath. From the outside, it looked like any other house on that street. Old but solid, with a wide front yard, a big maple tree, and a wooden fence around the back. My parents were excited. They remodeled the whole place before moving in. Fresh paint, new flooring, new light fixtures. Everything looked clean, bright, full of hope. But I remember one day, the day we did the final walkthrough before officially moving in. Dad was up ahead, checking the kitchen and the living room. I was standing in the upstairs hallway, looking out the window, and my mother walked up beside me. She placed her hand on my shoulder, gently. Then she leaned down, close to my ear, and whispered, so softly, as if she didn't want anything in the house to hear, "The family who lived here before, they experienced a lot of things. Things from the other side." I looked at her. She smiled. That calm, steady smile I'd seen 100 times. The smile she wore whenever she talked about the spirit world like it was the most normal thing on earth. "But you don't need to worry," she continued. "I'll lock them out. They won't get in." I nodded. I was young then. I trusted her. I believed she could ward off anything. And for 4 years in that house on Elm Creek Road, I wasn't wrong. No strange sounds at night. No dark shadows in the hallway. No one calling my name when I was alone in my room. The house was quiet, warm, normal, like any other house. My mother kept her promise. She locked them out. But 4 years later, our family moved away. My mother left the house. And when she left, she took her protection with her. The door. The door she'd kept sealed for 4 years. It opened. And the things on the other side, they had been waiting a very long time. After my family moved out, my father didn't sell the house on Elm Creek Road. He held on to it and rented it out. To my dad, it was just an investment. A solid old house that had been nicely remodeled, good location, affordable rent. He didn't think much of it. He'd never seen a single thing out of the ordinary in 4 years of living there. As far as he was concerned, the house was perfectly normal. But he was wrong. The first family to rent the house was a young Mian couple, newlyweds with 2 small children. They moved in on a sunny day. I remember because my dad dragged me along to help them carry boxes. Everything looked great. The house was bright. They were laughing. The kids ran up and down the stairs, squealing with excitement. It looked like the perfect fresh start. 6 months later, they called my father and said they wanted out. My dad asked why. They didn't explain, just said the house wasn't a good fit. Dad thought it was odd, but he didn't push it. They moved out quietly, quickly, hastily, as if they were running from something. A few weeks later, the rumors started spreading through the Mian community in Ashford. You know how it is in a small community. Everybody knows everybody, and everything gets passed around by word of mouth. And the stories people were telling about that first family, they sent chills down my spine. People said they started hearing footsteps on the 2nd floor at night, even though everyone was on the 1st floor. People said the little daughter kept waking up crying in the middle of the night, pointing at a dark corner of the room and saying, "There's an old lady standing there." People said the husband woke up one night and found the basement door standing wide open, even though he was absolutely certain he'd locked it before bed. He went down to check, and halfway down the stairs, he heard breathing. Heavy. Slow. Right at the bottom of the staircase, in the darkness. He never made it to the bottom of those stairs. He turned around, shut the door, and dragged a cabinet in front of it. But those were just rumors. That family never confirmed or denied any of it. They simply vanished from Ashford, moved to another city, and never came back. Then it was Uncle Seng's turn. Uncle Seng was my father's older brother. He was practical, tough, and didn't believe in ghosts. When he heard the first family had moved out, he just laughed. "Probably scared of mice," he said. "Old houses always have mice." He knew my family had lived there for 4 years with no problems, so what was there to be afraid of? He moved in with his wife and 4 children. At first, everything was fine. First month, normal. Second month, still normal. Uncle Seng started thinking the previous family had just been weak-minded, over-imaginative. Then the 3rd month came. Mala, Uncle Seng's oldest daughter, 16 at the time, was taking a shower one evening. The bathroom was on the 1st floor, right next to the kitchen. She was shampooing her hair, eyes closed, warm water running down. Everything was normal. Then she heard a voice, not her mother's voice, not her little brother's voice, not anyone in the family. It was the voice of an old woman, raspy, trembling, full of rage. "Get out!" Mala opened her eyes. Soapy water stung them, but she didn't feel it. All she felt was cold, cold to the bone, even though the water was still hot. She pulled the shower curtain aside. No one was there. But the voice kept going, clear, sharp, as if the person was standing right outside the bathtub, less than a step away from her. "Get out of my house! This is my house!" Mala screamed. She jumped out of the tub, wrapped a towel around herself, threw the door open and ran out. Her mother, Aunt Sang, was in the kitchen. She saw Mala burst out, face white as paper, whole body shaking, water still dripping onto the floor. "There's an old woman in the bathroom," Mala cried. "She was screaming at me. She said this is her house." Aunt Sang rushed into the bathroom to check. No one was there. The bathroom window was still shut. The bathroom door had been locked from the inside. Mala had unlocked it when she ran out. There was no way for anyone to get in and out without being noticed. Uncle Sang didn't believe it. He thought Mala was imagining things. Told her she'd been watching too many horror movies. He laughed, patted her on the shoulder, and told her to go to bed early. But Mala wasn't imagining it. Because it happened again. A second time. A third time. Then a fourth. Every time Mala stepped into that bathroom, the old woman's voice would come. Same voice. Same words. "Get out of my house." Then it was the children's turn. Mala's younger brother, Chue, 12 years old, started hearing voices from the basement. Not screaming like the old woman in the bathroom. Whispers. Multiple voices at once, low and murmuring, as if a group of people were talking to each other down there. But nobody could make out what they were saying. Chue said that every time he walked past the basement door, the whispers would get a little louder, as if they were trying to call him down. And the shadows. The children started seeing dark shapes moving through the basement. Not shadows cast by objects. Not shadows created by light coming through windows. These were shadows shaped like people, drifting slowly along the walls, sliding across the floor, disappearing into dark corners. Shadows with no source. Shadows with no owner. Uncle Seng still didn't believe it. He was a stubborn man. He stayed for nearly a year, gritting his teeth, trying to convince himself it was just old pipes, drafts, and the kids' overactive imaginations. But in the end, even he gave in. Uncle Seng's family moved out after nearly 12 months. And the story they told afterward, the story of the old woman in the bathroom, quickly became the most famous ghost story in the Mien community of Ashford. That old woman stood right outside the bathtub, screaming, "Get out of my house!" But she'd been dead for nearly a century. After Uncle Sang moved out, the house on Elm Creek Road sat empty for nearly 2 months. Nobody in the Mien community wanted to touch it. The story of the old woman in the bathroom had spread everywhere, from Ashford to neighboring towns. The house had become a warning that Mien mothers whispered to each other at family gatherings, "Don't ever go near that house on Elm Creek." But then one family decided to take the chance. Now, my father's closest friend from way back. He was the kind of guy you'd meet once and never forget. Loud voice, booming laugh, handshake so firm you'd think he was trying to crush your fingers. Now wasn't afraid of ghosts. He used to say, "Ghosts should be afraid of me, not the other way around." When he heard the stories about the house, he just waved them off. "Let me rent it. I need a big place for the kids." Now moved in with his wife, 3 daughters, and 1 son. The house came alive again. Lights on, kids laughing, the smell of dinner rising from the kitchen every evening. The first 2 months, perfectly peaceful. Now called my dad, laughing his big laugh. "House is great, brother. Bright, airy. Kids love it. Not a single ghost in sight." My dad breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe the stories before were just coincidences. Maybe the first family was weak-nerved. Maybe Mala was just a girl who spooked easily. Maybe everything was fine. But by the 3rd month, Now stopped calling. And when my dad called him, his voice sounded different. Lower, clipped, as if he was trying not to say too much. "It's fine, brother. Everything's fine." But his voice said everything was not fine at all. The real story of Now's family in the house on Elm Creek Road only came out after they'd moved away, and it was worse than anything Uncle Seng had experienced. It started with the children. Lynn, Now's oldest daughter, 14, was the first to see them. One night, around 2 a.m, Lynn woke up to use the bathroom. Her bedroom was on the second floor, at the end of the hallway. She opened her door, stepped into the dark hallway, and froze. In the middle of the hallway, there were 2 children, a boy and a girl, small, maybe 3 or 4 years old. They were wearing white clothes, old-fashioned, very old, the kind of clothes Lynn had only ever seen in black and white photographs from the turn of the century. They were running back and forth through the hallway, from one end to the other, over and over, making no sound. Their feet weren't touching the floor. They were hovering, just a few inches above the hardwood, and they didn't look at Lynn. They just ran, back and forth, as if she didn't exist, as if they were trapped in a loop, a moment replaying forever. Lynn stood there, unable to breathe, for about 10 seconds. Then she turned around, slammed her bedroom door shut, jumped into bed and pulled the blanket over her head. She lay there, shaking until sunrise. The next morning, she told her younger sister. Her sister, little Ying, 12 years old, nodded slowly. "You saw them too?" Ying said. "I saw them last week. 2 kids running in the hallway. I thought I was dreaming." The 2 children in the hallway. They appeared almost every night, sometimes running back and forth, sometimes just standing at the end of the hall, backs turned, silent, sometimes vanishing before you could get a good look, leaving behind just a flash of cold, a faint breeze, and the feeling that you'd just seen something you were never meant to see. Then came the noises. Now's wife started hearing knocking at night, not on the front door, from inside the walls. Knock, knock, knock. 3 raps. Steady. Every night at exactly 3 a.m., knock, knock, knock. Every single night. Never stopping. She told her husband to check the walls. Now knocked back. Nothing. Solid wall. No pipes, no hollow spots. But the knocking continued. The shadows were everywhere. Sliding along the living room walls, drifting past the kitchen windows, standing still in the corners of bedrooms, then dissolving when you turned on the light. Now started sleeping with the lights on. The whole family slept with the lights on. But the scariest thing didn't happen inside the house. It happened outside. Lynn, the oldest daughter, was going through a breakup at the time. Her boyfriend's name was Dao, 17, hot-tempered and stubborn. He didn't accept Lynn wanting to break up. One night, around 10 o'clock, Dao showed up at the front door. Lynn's parents weren't home. She was there alone with her siblings. Dao knocked, pounded, yelled for Lynn to open up. "Open the door! I'm not leaving! Open the door!" Lynn was scared. She didn't open it. She stayed quiet, turned off the lights, and hoped he'd just go away. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Dao kept standing outside, knocking, yelling, pleading. Then finally, he gave up. He turned around, walked down the porch steps, and headed along the pathway toward the street. And that's when it happened. Dao heard footsteps behind him, fast, pounding, like someone running. He spun around, and he saw the old woman. An old woman, very old, white hair hanging loose, wearing a long nightgown, face wrinkled and twisted in the darkness. She was running straight at him, from the direction of the house, and she was screaming, "Where are you going? Where are you going? Take me with you! Take me with you!" Dao ran. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him, not daring to look back. He sprinted 3 blocks, jumped into his car, slammed the door, locked it, and sat there trembling for 20 minutes before he could start the engine and drive away. He never went back to that house. and he never came looking for Lynn again. Now's family moved out after nearly a year. And then came my cousin Fong. Fong was my father's nephew, the last person brave enough to move into that house. This time, they took precautions. Fong hired a shaman, a well-known one from St. Paul, to come to the house and perform a cleansing ritual. The ceremony lasted all night. The shaman burned incense, struck gongs, chanted prayers, and scattered salt around every room. When it was over, the shaman told Fong, "I found the old woman's ghost. I've bound her to the maple tree out front. She can't get back inside. You have nothing to worry about." Fong believed him. He moved in. 1 month later, Fong moved out. He didn't share details. Nobody knew exactly what happened to Fong during that month. But when he was loading his things out of the house, I was standing right there watching. His hands were shaking. His eyes were sunken, bloodshot, as if he hadn't slept in weeks. And when I asked, "You okay, Fong?" he just looked at me. Those eyes. I will never forget those eyes. They weren't the eyes of a normal person. They were the eyes of someone who had seen something that human beings were never supposed to see. And that something had taken root inside his head, replaying on a loop, never stopping. Fong didn't say a word. He just shook his head, turned around, and walked away. The shaman said he'd tied the ghost to a tree in the front yard. But Cousin Fong lasted exactly 1 month. When he moved out, he didn't say a single word. Only his eyes said everything. After Fong moved out, the house on Elm Creek Road became something no one wanted to touch. My father couldn't find a single tenant. Not a single Mian family in Ashford dared to go near it. The stories had traveled too far. The old woman in the bathtub, the ghost children running in the hallway, the shadows in the basement, the hollow look in Fong's eyes when he packed his things. All of it had turned the house into a curse that everyone stayed away from. My dad tried to sell. He listed it in the local paper, dropped the price, then dropped it again and again. No takers. The Mian community already knew the story. American buyers would come, look around, then leave. Nobody ever explained why, but there was always something uncomfortable on their faces when they walked out the front door, as if they sensed something they couldn't name. The house went into foreclosure. The bank took it back, and then it just sat there, on the real estate market, with a "for sale" sign stuck in the front yard, for 2 whole years. 2 years without a single signed offer. Grass grew wild in the yard, paint chipped and peeled, windows gathered dust. The house looked more and more like something that was slowly dying, a wooden skeleton rotting in the middle of a quiet street. Neighbors complained. The city stepped in, and eventually Ashford decided to demolish it. I wasn't there when they tore it down, but my father told me about it. The bulldozer came on a gray winter morning. Took less than a day. The roof caved in first, then the walls, then the floors, then the basement was filled with rubble and dirt. When the machines left, all that remained was an empty lot, flat, bare, silent, as if the house had never existed. But the story didn't go with it. And the most horrifying part, the part I never knew, came a year after the house was demolished. Uncle Seng called me on a Friday evening. "Want to grab a beer?" His voice was casual, light, but there was something behind it, a heaviness I couldn't quite place. We went to O'Malley's, that little bar on Main Street where you can sit for hours and nobody bothers you. Uncle Seng ordered 2 beers. We made small talk. Work, weather, which schools his kids were going to. Normal stuff. Easy. Then the second beer ran out. Uncle Seng ordered 2 more. He went quiet for a while, staring down at the table, his finger tracing circles on the bottle. Then he looked up, met my eyes, and asked, "Kael, do you know what really happened in that house? The real story?" I shook my head. "No, Uncle. I only know what everyone else says." Uncle Seng nodded slowly. He took a long pull from his beer. And then he told me. "A few years ago, I went down to the Ashford Public Library. I wanted to look into the history of the house, see if something had happened there. I figured if I knew the cause, maybe I'd understand why it was the way it was. He paused, took another drink. His eyes went distant, as if he was seeing those old, yellowed pages again. I found a newspaper article, very old, from the early 1900s. The article was about an incident at that exact address, that exact house on Elm Creek Road. Uncle Sang's voice dropped lower. The bar was loud all around us, music, laughter, glasses clinking, but I couldn't hear anything except his voice. The basement. You remember the basement, right? Back in those days, it used to be a bar. The owner ran it to make a living, served drinks every night to earn money for his family, a wife and 2 kids, and he had an old maid, a housekeeper who'd been with the family for years. He ran the bar downstairs, and the family lived upstairs. Life went on. Then one night, a regular weekend night, the bar was winding down, just a few customers still hanging around, and the owner, he snapped. Uncle Sang said it very softly, very slowly, as if every word carried weight. Nobody knows why. The article didn't explain. It just said he grabbed a knife, or maybe an axe, I don't remember exactly, and he killed them. Killed every last customer still sitting in the bar, right there in the basement. I sat there, couldn't say a word. Then he went upstairs to the first floor. The old maid was in the bathroom, getting ready for bed. He drowned her in the bathtub, held her under the water until she stopped breathing. Then he went upstairs to the second floor, where his wife and 2 children were sleeping. Uncle Sang didn't continue right away. He just looked at me. His eyes were red. He killed his wife, killed his 2 small children in their beds. Then he hanged himself, right there in the house. Silence. The music in the bar kept playing. Someone was laughing at the next table. The world kept spinning. But I felt like time had stopped. And that was when everything clicked into place. The old woman in the bathroom. The maid who was drowned. Every time someone stepped into that bathroom, she appeared. She screamed, "Get out of my house!" Because in her mind, the house was still hers. She was still living there. She didn't know she was dead. The 2 children running in the upstairs hallway. The 2 kids murdered in their beds. They were still playing, still running, still living that last moment before the darkness swallowed them whole. The shadows in the basement. The bar patrons killed that night. They were still there, still sitting at a bar that no longer existed, still nursing the last drink they'd never finish. And the killer? He hanged himself right there in the house. His soul was there too, along with all his victims, together, forever, in a house where nobody could see the blood, but the blood had soaked into every brick, every floorboard, every particle of dust in the air. I sat in that bar, looking at Uncle Sang, and I understood. I understood why my mother had to lock them out. I understood how she'd managed to keep the house peaceful for 4 years. Because she knew. She knew from the very beginning. She knew how many souls were trapped inside those walls, and she had used every ounce of her power to keep them still. But when she left, they were free. The basement used to be a bar. The old maid died in the bathtub. The 2 children were murdered upstairs. And the killer, he hanged himself right there in that very house. They all stayed. None of them ever left, even after the house was torn down. I'm not sure they went with it. You can demolish a house, but you can't demolish its memory. And sometimes, the memory is the scariest thing of all. I want to pause for a moment before continuing, because the next story has nothing to do with the house on Elm Creek Road. It happened somewhere completely different, deep in the woods, hundreds of miles from Ashford. But it involves my father, and it involves a tradition that the Mian people have carried with them for generations. A tradition that, as it turns out, can attract things you really don't want following you home. Before I tell you the story, I need to explain something about how the Mian people navigate the forest when they go hunting. When you go deep into the woods. The kind of woods with no trails, no signs, no GPS signal. You need a way to find your way back. In Mian culture, we have a simple method, slashing branches. Every so often, you take your knife and slice a small cut into a branch along your path, a diagonal slash that peels back the brown bark to reveal the white wood underneath. That white mark stands out against the green and brown of the forest. You walk, you slash, you mark, and when you need to come back, you just follow the white marks on the branches. They'll lead you right along the path you came. Simple, effective, safe. The only problem is, you're not the only one who can follow those marks back. This happened on a regular autumn weekend. I was older by then, mid-20s, and my dad invited me on a deer hunting trip. It was our tradition. Every hunting season, the two of us would drive out to a national forest about 4 hours from Ashford, set up camp for the night, and head into the woods at dawn. The first day, we'd always arrive around midday. The drive was too long to leave time for actual hunting, so we used that day to scout. Hiking deep into the forest, tracking deer footprints, looking for scat, searching for trails where multiple paths intersected. When we found a spot where lots of tracks crossed, that was where we'd set up our deer stands. Simple strategy, but it worked. And of course, we marked our trail by slashing branches. Walkaways, slash a branch. Walk some more. Slash another. White marks stretching from the forest edge deep into the interior. That afternoon, we'd made it about a mile into the woods. The air was getting cooler. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the canopy in long golden beams, falling on ground carpeted with dry leaves. The forest was quiet, the kind of quiet you only find deep in the wilderness, where there are no cars, no voices, just the faint rustle of wind through the leaves and the occasional bird call in the distance. My dad walked ahead. I followed about 5 feet behind. We were tracking a clear set of deer prints, pressed deep into the damp soil along a creek bed. Then I heard it. Whispers, very faint, very soft, like someone speaking very close to you but deliberately keeping their voice so low that you can only hear the sound without catching the words. I stopped, tilted my head, listened. It vanished. I figured I was imagining things, or maybe it was the wind. I was about to ask my dad, "Hey, did you just say something?" But before I could get the words out, my dad turned around, looked at me, and asked that exact same question. "Did you just say something?" I stared at him. He stared at me. Both of us silent. "I didn't say anything," I replied. "Neither did I," he said. We looked at each other for a long moment. Then Dad shrugged. "Probably the wind." He turned around and kept walking. I followed. At that point, honestly, I didn't think much of it. Wind, leaves, strange sounds in the forest. Normal stuff. Nothing to worry about. We kept going. 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Nothing unusual. Then my dad stopped abruptly. He turned around and looked at me, his face annoyed. "Did you just push me?" "Push? Push what?" I asked, confused. "Just now. Something pushed me from behind." "You didn't push me?" I looked at the distance between us. My dad was walking at least 5 feet ahead of me, nearly 2 meters. There was no way I could have reached him. "No, Dad. I'm like 6 feet behind you. How could I push you?" My dad said nothing. He looked past me, into the dark stretch of forest behind my back. His eyes swept slowly over the trees, the underbrush, the shadows between trunks, searching for something. Then he turned forward again. "Let's keep going," he said, his voice lower than usual. We walked on, but the atmosphere had changed. The silence of the forest. The silence I'd always found peaceful, now felt different. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy, thick, as if the air itself was getting denser, as if the forest was closing in around us, as if something was standing very close, but not letting you see it. I started feeling afraid, not the normal kind of afraid, the kind you feel in your skin, the hairs on the back of your neck standing on end, the hair on your arms rising, your spine turning to ice, the kind of fear where your most primal survival instinct, the oldest instinct you have, is screaming inside your skull, "Run! Something is here. Run now." But I didn't run, because my dad was still walking ahead, calm and steady, and I didn't want to look like a coward in front of him. My dad turned around, face white as chalk. "Did you just push me?" "No, Dad. I'm 6 feet behind you." We stood in the middle of the deep woods, staring at each other, and we both knew there was a third thing walking with us. We didn't talk about what had just happened, didn't mention the whispers, didn't bring up the push. We just kept walking, silent, tense, each step heavier than the last. We hiked another 15 minutes or so until we reached a dry ravine, a deep gully running through the middle of the forest, both sides sloping down through rotting leaves. At the bottom, we found a jackpot of deer tracks, dozens of hoof prints pressed into the damp soil, crossing and overlapping. Clearly a watering spot that deer visited regularly, a perfect location for a deer stand. My dad surveyed the terrain. Then he said, "You go left and look for more tracks. I'll go right." I nodded. We split up, each heading a different direction along the ravine. I walked alone, dry leaves crunching under my boots. The late afternoon light was fading, down to just a few pale golden rays slanting through the canopy. Shadows were starting to creep between the trees. I looked at the ground, searching for prints. After a few minutes, I crouched down to examine some fresh deer scat. Then I heard it. "Come here." 2 words, clear as day, in mean. My head snapped up. It was my dad's voice. Or at least, it sounded exactly like my dad's voice. Deep, steady, familiar. I figured he was calling me back. Maybe he'd found a better spot. I stood up and walked back toward where he was. When I reached him, he was standing by a big oak, looking at the ground. He glanced up when he saw me. "Why'd you come back? Nothing over there?" he asked. "You just called me," I said. "Called you? I didn't call you." I stared at him. He stared at me. And I saw it. The fear on my father's face. Not panic fear. The fear of a man who'd spent years in these woods, who'd walked through countless forests, and who knew that there were things in these woods that weren't people. "I haven't said a word," he repeated, his voice dropping lower. "But I heard you clearly. Your voice. Come here." 2 words, clear as anything. My dad was quiet for a long time. Then he looked around, slowly, carefully, his eyes scanning every tree trunk, every bush, every dark gap between the trees, as if he was looking for something, or confirming that something was close. Then he said, very softly, almost a whisper, "This spot, it's not good. It looked better back there. Let's head back." I knew he was lying. This spot was perfect, full of deer tracks, great terrain, good sight lines. But he didn't care about hunting anymore. He wanted to leave, right now. We started walking back the way we came. Dad in front, me behind. Faster than before. Longer strides, quicker pace. Neither of us said a word. And that's when I heard branches snapping behind us. Crack! A single, dry snap. Clear and sharp. Like someone had stepped on a dead branch and it broke under their weight. I glanced back. Nothing. Just trees. Just deepening shadows. I kept walking. Crack! Crack! 2 more. Closer. Steady. Like footsteps. My dad heard them too. He didn't look back. But I saw his shoulders stiffen, his back straighten, his pace quicken. He was trying not to show fear. But I knew. We walked faster. Then faster still. nearly jogging through the forest, dodging roots, hopping over dry creeks, ducking under low branches. And behind us, the cracking kept coming. Crack, crack, crack. Steady, rhythmic, never slowing down, never speeding up, just steady, as if whatever was following us was walking at exactly our pace, unhurried, because it knew we could never outrun it. After a while, the cracking stopped. The whispers disappeared. The forest went quiet again. But it was a false quiet, the kind of silence you know is only temporary. We slowed down. My dad stopped, leaned against a tree trunk, breathing hard. Sweat ran down his temples. He looked exhausted, not just physically, but mentally. His eyes were heavy, weighed down, as if he'd just fought something I couldn't see. We made it back to camp without saying a word. Dad decided we'd set up the deer stand somewhere else the next day. Somewhere closer to the forest edge, somewhere safer. We ate dinner in silence. Then we crawled into the tent and went to sleep. That night, I woke up. No reason, no noise, no nightmare. I just snapped awake, fully alert, as if someone had flipped a switch inside my head. I lay there. The tent was dark. Dad was beside me, breathing steadily. Outside, the forest was silent. So silent I could hear crickets chirping far off in the distance. I closed my eyes, tried to go back to sleep. Couldn't. And then it came, that feeling. The feeling that once you've experienced it, you never forget. Every hair on my body stood up, all at once. From my arms to the back of my neck, from my legs to my spine. A chill raced down my back. Not cold from the weather, but cold from fear. Pure, raw, primal fear. The kind of fear where you don't need to see anything. Your body just knows. Your body is screaming at you that something is very close, and it's watching you. Everything turned cold, heavy, dark. Not dark because of the absence of light. Dark in a way where the darkness has weight, pressing down on your chest, squeezing you, making it hard to breathe. You know that feeling? The feeling of someone standing right behind you, right there. And you know they're there, you can feel their presence, but you don't dare turn around and look, because you know that if you turn, if you open your eyes, you'll see something you'll regret seeing for the rest of your life. But I couldn't keep my eyes shut forever. I opened them. At first, I didn't notice anything. The tent ceiling, dark, the sleeping bag beside me, Dad still sleeping, normal. Then my eyes drifted to the right, to the side of the tent, and I saw it. A shadow. Right outside the tent, cast clearly onto the thin fabric, the shadow of something standing upright, motionless, silent. Its shape was like a person, head, shoulders, torso, but something was off. The proportions were wrong, too tall, or too thin, or both. And it was pressed close to the tent wall, so close that if I reached out my hand, I could have touched it through the fabric. It stood there, silent, unmoving. And I knew for certain it was looking inside the tent. It was looking at me. I panicked. Inside my head, I made up a story. That's a tree. Just a tree. A tree's shadow on the tent. Normal. Nothing to be scared of. Close your eyes. Go to sleep. It's just a tree. I shut my eyes. Lay there, heart hammering like it was about to punch through my ribcage. But deep down I knew. Trees don't stand that close to tents. Trees don't cast shadows that clearly on fabric from inches away. And most importantly, trees don't stand still and watch you sleep. I don't know how long I lay there. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe an hour. Time loses meaning when you're lying in the dark, eyes clamped shut, heart racing, cold sweat soaking through your shirt, knowing that something is standing just outside, separated from you by nothing more than a thin sheet of tent fabric. I pretended to sleep. I pretended well. Steady breathing, body motionless, eyes sealed tight. But every sense inside me was cranked up to maximum. I heard everything. The faint wind, the rustle of leaves, a distant owl, and beneath all of it, a heavy, thick silence, as if the entire forest was holding its breath. The shadow was still there. I knew because I could still feel it. That invisible weight pressing against the air around the tent. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, just stood there, waiting. Waiting for what? Then my father woke up. Not a normal waking. He lurched upright, his whole body jerking, legs kicking against the sleeping bag, hands clawing at the darkness. A sharp, gasping breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale. Like a drowning man who'd just broken the surface. I opened my eyes and looked at him. In the faint light bleeding through the tent walls, I could see his face. White as bone, drenched in sweat, eyes wide open and staring into the dark. He was looking at me, but his eyes were empty. As if he was looking through me, looking at something behind me, behind the tent wall, behind the forest. "Dad?" I whispered. He blinked. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me this time. And I saw the fear in his eyes. Not vague, undefined fear. Specific fear. Fear of something he had just seen, just heard, just felt. He sat still for a moment, breathing, trying to calm himself. Then he spoke, his voice hoarse. "We're going home tomorrow. No more hunting." I was about to ask why, but right then I glanced to the right, at the side of the tent. The shadow was gone. It had vanished. When, I had no idea. While I was watching Dad jolt awake, it had left. Silently. Without a sound. It had been standing there for hours, and now it was gone. But where had it gone? I didn't say anything, just nodded. Okay. And I lay back down, pulled the blanket up to my chin, closed my eyes. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I lay there, eyes open, staring at the tent ceiling, listening for every sound outside. But there was nothing more. Just wind, just forest, just darkness. The next morning, when the first rays of sunlight filtered through the tent, we sat up in silence. Dad boiled coffee on the little gas stove. We sat there, sipping coffee, looking at each other, and finally he spoke. "I had a dream," he said. His voice was quiet, measured, as if every word had to be weighed before he'd let it leave his mouth. "I dreamed I was in the woods. These exact woods. I was running." He paused, drank some coffee. His eyes watched the small flame. "I was running because something was chasing me. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was behind me. I was running hard, but it never fell back. It was just there, behind me, always the same distance, as if it didn't need to run and could still keep up. Then I heard its voice. It spoke. In mean, clear as day, right behind me. Dad looked at me. His eyes were dead serious. 'You can run, but I know how to find you.' A chill ran down my spine. In the warm morning light, I still felt cold. Then, in the dream, Dad continued, I saw it. That spirit. It wasn't chasing me anymore. It stopped, and it started following the slashes on the branches, the white marks that you and I made yesterday. I understood immediately. The branches we'd slashed. White marks on brown bark. The trail leading from deep in the forest back to the edge, back to camp. The spirit didn't need to chase us. It just needed to follow the marks. It walked along the slashed branches, slowly, deliberately, from one to the next, heading toward our camp. Dad set his coffee down. His hand trembled slightly. Then I woke up, but I couldn't move. My eyes were open. I could see the tent ceiling, see you lying next to me, but I couldn't move a muscle. Something was pressing down on my chest. Heavy, so heavy. I tried to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open. I tried to sit up, but my arms and legs wouldn't respond. Sleep paralysis. In mean culture, we call it being sat on. When a dark spirit sits on your chest while you sleep, pinning you down, forcing you to witness whatever it wants you to see. While I was paralyzed, Dad said, his voice barely above a whisper, I could sense it. Outside the tent. It had made it here. It had followed the trail, from branch to branch, and it had reached our camp. It was standing right outside the tent. I could sense it. I could hear it breathing. I swallowed hard. The shadow I had seen cast against the tent fabric. It wasn't a tree. It was never a tree. It stood there for a long time. Then it turned around, walked back into the forest, and when it left, I could finally move. Dad looked at me. His gaze was serious, resolute. We have to go back and break the marked branches, all of them. If we don't, it'll follow that trail right back to our home. I didn't argue, didn't question, didn't doubt. After everything that had happened, the whispers, the push, the mimicked voice, the cracking branches, the shadow outside the tent, I believed my father. I believed every word. We broke camp quickly. Then we hiked back into the forest, along the exact same path, found every marked branch, and snapped them, one by one, 2, 3, 4, snapping them until the white marks disappeared, until the trail leading back to us was erased. We broke most of them, not all, because we'd gone very deep and didn't dare go all the way back in, but enough to destroy the path. Then we turned around, got in the truck, and drove home to Ashford. On the drive home, my dad said one more thing. He spoke slowly, eyes fixed on the road ahead, hands tight on the wheel. Some people who are haunted, they take their ghosts into the woods, walk in deep, then leave them there. They think if the spirit is stranded in the middle of nowhere, it won't find its way back. Sometimes it works. The spirit gets left behind, wandering alone in the trees. But sometimes, other people walk into those woods, and they run into it. He glanced over at me. The thing we ran into out there, I don't think it belonged to those woods. I think it was someone else's ghost. Someone brought it out there and left it behind, and it had been out there, alone, waiting, until we came along. I asked myself, was the thing we encountered in the woods that day a spirit that someone had abandoned? And if we hadn't broken those branches, if we'd left the trail intact, would it have followed the marks all the way home? I never want to know the answer. I want to rewind the clock for a moment, back to when I was 12 or 13 years old, before the hunting trip with my father, before I learned the truth about the house on Elm Creek Road. Back then, I was just a regular Mien kid, going to school, playing ball, fishing in the creek, and every hunting season, tagging along with Uncle Vang into the woods. Uncle Vang was my mother's younger brother. He wasn't a shaman like her, but he had a deep understanding of the spirit world. He was a quiet man, serious, with sharp eyes. The kind of eyes that, when they looked into the forest, you got the feeling he was seeing more than what you saw. Much, much more. That hunting season, Uncle Vang took me to a stretch of forest north of Ashford. We left early. Before dawn, fog clinging thick to the ground. Uncle Vang drove his old pickup truck down a muddy dirt road, bouncing and rattling, open fields on either side leading to the tree line. When we got there, we set up our tree stands, those little hunting seats you strap to a tree with buckles and brackets, and climbed up about 10 feet off the ground to wait for deer. If you've never sat in a tree stand, let me paint the picture for you. You sit still, completely still. No moving, No talking, no making any sound at all. You sit there, up in the trees, above the ground, and you wait. For hours, sometimes all day. You listen to birds singing, wind blowing, leaves falling. You watch each leaf spin and drift down, each squirrel dart across a branch, each shaft of light pierce through the canopy. And in that absolute stillness, you start to notice things you'd normally miss. We'd been sitting there for about an hour. No deer, just birds and wind and leaves. I was getting bored, my eyes wandering, counting trees, counting leaves, looking for squirrels to pass the time. Then I spotted it, about 500 yards away, a tree. But it looked off. I couldn't explain what was off about it. It was just a tree, standing among hundreds of others. But something about it snagged my attention. Maybe it was the shape. Maybe it was the way it stood. Too straight, too rigid, while every other tree around it swayed gently in the breeze. Maybe it was the way the light hit it. Or rather, didn't hit it. That tree was darker than the ones around it, as if it was absorbing light instead of reflecting it. I stared at it for a while, then looked away. No big deal, just a tree. An hour passed. I looked again, and the tree was closer. I wasn't sure. At that distance, through hundreds of trunks packed together, it was hard to judge accurately. But I had a strong feeling, a gut feeling, that it wasn't in the same spot. It was nearer, maybe 20, 30 yards. I squinted, trying to see more clearly. But through all those trees at that range, I couldn't be certain. My eyes must be playing tricks on me, I told myself. Sitting in a tree stand for too long, eyes fatigued, brain starting to mess with you. Normal stuff. I looked away, tried not to think about it. Another hour passed. I looked again, and this time I was sure. The tree had moved. It was closer, significantly closer. Close enough that I could make out its shape more clearly. A slender, tall, dark trunk, with no leaves on the lower portion. It stood motionless among the other trees, but it was in a new position. A position it absolutely had not been in an hour ago. My heart started beating faster. I glanced over at Uncle Vang. He was sitting on his stand about 30 feet away. He was staring straight ahead. His face was tight. His jaw was clenched. His eyes weren't blinking. "Uncle Vang," I whispered, "do you see that weird tree? That strange-looking one over there?" Uncle Vang didn't turn his head. He gave a small nod, very slight, then silence. He'd seen it. For a while now. He'd watched it move. But he hadn't said anything. He just sat there, silent, serious, eyes locked on it. Uncle Vang's silence scared me more than any words could have. Because I knew Uncle Vang. He wasn't the type to scare easily. He'd gone into the woods alone for days at a time. He'd faced bears, wolves, rattlesnakes. He wasn't afraid of wild animals. But that thing standing out there, that moving tree, it made him go silent in a way that no animal ever could. Inside my head, a voice kept repeating, "If that tree moves one more time, I'm going to lose it." Another hour passed. It moved. Closer. Much closer. Close enough now that I could see detail. The dark trunk, the rough surface, and the top of it. The top looked strange. Not like a treetop. Like something else. But I didn't dare look too closely. I didn't want to look too closely. Uncle Vang suddenly spoke. His voice was calm. Unnervingly calm. The kind of calm that's clearly forced. "All right, no deer today. Let's pack up and head home." He unstrapped his stand quickly. I unstrapped mine. We climbed down and started walking. Fast, without looking back. Through the woods, out to the tree line, into the truck. During the entire walk out of the forest, I didn't dare turn around. I didn't want to know if the tree was following us. I just walked, fast as I could, When we were in the truck, doors shut, locked, and Uncle Vang had started the engine. That's when I finally breathed. My heart was still pounding. My hands were still shaking. Uncle Vang drove onto the main road, quiet for a full 10 minutes. Then he turned and looked at me. "What did you see?" he asked. "A tree," I said. "A tree that moved. Every hour it got closer." Uncle Vang nodded slowly. He was quiet for another long moment. Then he spoke. And his voice, when he said it, I will remember forever. Low, heavy, as if each word carried the weight of something he'd been holding in for hours. "You saw a tree, but I saw something different." I stared at him. He looked straight ahead, hands gripping the wheel. It was a little girl, small, maybe 5 or 6 years old, wearing white. She was just standing there, watching us, not moving, not saying a word, just standing and staring. Every hour, she would take a step closer. I couldn't speak. My mouth was dry, my throat locked up. She was looking right at me, Uncle Vang continued, the entire time. She didn't blink, didn't look away, just watched. And every time I turned away and then looked back, she was closer, as if she only moved when no one was looking. I will never forget the look in Uncle Vang's eyes when he said that. It wasn't the look of a man telling a story. It was the look of a man who had just barely escaped with his life. Because he knew, if we'd stayed one more hour, that little girl would have been close enough. And when she got close enough, he didn't want to find out what would happen. I sat in the truck, staring out the window, watching the forest shrink in the rearview mirror. And I wondered, why did I only see a tree while Uncle Vang saw a girl? Was it because Uncle Vang had those special eyes? The same kind my mother had? The kind that could see the other side? Or was it because the girl wanted me to see a tree? Because if I'd seen her for what she really was, I would have run before she got close enough. She was tricking me, hiding her true form behind the shape of a tree. So I wouldn't run, so I'd sit still, so she could keep getting closer. Step by step, step by step, hour by hour. And if we hadn't left, if Uncle Vang hadn't called it quits with his "no deer today," then what? That question has haunted me for years, and I've never found the answer. When I grew up and left Ashford, I figured I'd left all of it behind. The house on Elm Creek Road had been demolished. The haunted forests were hundreds of miles away. I moved to a bigger city, found steady work, lived the normal life of a regular adult. I told myself that everything I'd been through, all of it was in the past. I was safe now. But I was wrong. Again. My first job out of school was in security. Not the sit at a desk and watch cameras kind. The kind where you patrol at night, respond to alarms, clear buildings. Uniform, flashlight, radio, and sometimes a sidearm. I liked the job. It gave me a sense of control, a sense of power. After everything I'd been through growing up, I wanted to become the kind of person who wasn't afraid of anything. The night I'm about to tell you about, I was on shift with Brennan, my squad partner. Brennan was a big American dude, loud, talkative, and completely convinced that ghosts weren't real. He was the kind of guy who'd hear a ghost story and laugh in your face. "Bro, ghosts aren't real." I liked working with Brennan because he made me feel safe. His skepticism was like a shield against the things I knew were out there. Around 11 p.m., we got a call from dispatch. Motion alarm on the second floor of a building on Ridgeway Street. An old office building that had been converted into a medical clinic with a pharmacy attached. The kind of building you drive past every day without ever noticing. Red brick, narrow windows, 3 stories, looking boring and harmless. We pulled up within minutes, parked out front, and right then, a man appeared. He was standing at the main entrance, keys in hand, 50-ish, salt and pepper hair, wearing a wrinkled dress shirt and slacks. Looked like a doctor who'd been at the office late. He nodded at us, unlocked the front door, and said, "Thanks for getting here fast. I'll take you up." We went inside. The first floor was dark, quiet. Pharmacy locked up, reception desk empty. The stairwell to the second floor was behind a locked door that, of course, the man didn't have the key to. "The stairwell key is upstairs in the office," he said. "Take the elevator." Not the most tactically sound option. Riding an elevator to the second floor meant stepping out into the unknown. But there was no other way up. Brennan shrugged, hit the button. The elevator opened. We stepped in. The elevator rose to the second floor. Doors opened. The hallway was pitch black, completely dark, except for one single overhead light at the far end of the hallway, casting a weak, yellowish glow onto a section of wall and floor. The rest of the corridor was swallowed in darkness. We switched on our flashlights, started checking, walked down the hall, tried every door. First door, locked. Second, locked. Third, locked. All secured. Good. Until the last one. The office at the end of the hall, right beneath the only light. The door was unlocked. We pushed it open and went in. It was an unused medical office, a sizable waiting room, empty reception area, and about 10 or 12 exam rooms in the back. We cleared every room. 1, 2, 10, 12. All empty. No one. No sign of forced entry. Nothing out of place. We stepped back out into the hallway, and I realized something was wrong. The overhead light, the one that had been on at the far end of the hallway, right where we'd just been, was off. And now a different light was on, at the opposite end of the hall, near the elevator. The light had switched positions, as if someone had turned off the one on this end and turned on the one on the other end. While we were inside the office clearing rooms, I looked at Brennan. And for the first time since I'd known him, the very first time, Brennan was scared. His face was white as a sheet, eyes wide. "Kael," he said, voice shaking, "those doors we just checked, we left them all locked, right?" "Yeah," I said. "Every one." Brennan pointed down the hallway. "Then look." I looked. Every single door we had just checked, every one, from one end of the hallway to the other, was standing wide open. All of them. As if someone had walked behind us, opened each door we'd just locked, and left them ajar. Stress, anxiety, adrenaline, all of it hitting at once. But we were security officers. We couldn't just run. We had to clear the building again. We went back through, opened every door, checked every room, locked them behind us. 1, 2, 3. Brennan leading, flashlight sweeping every corner, me right behind, radio on my shoulder. We finished the last office, started heading out. Just before we turned the corner into the main waiting area, the main door slammed shut. Bang! The sound echoed through the dark hallway. Brennan and I both jumped. My radio started going haywire. Pure static feedback, loud, piercing, as if something was trying to broadcast on the same frequency but only producing noise. At that point, I'm being honest, I just wanted to get the hell out of there. Immediately. We speed walked to the elevator, hit the button, waited, doors opened, stepped in, hit the first floor, doors closed, going down. When the elevator opened on the first floor, we stepped out and looked for the man who had let us in. He wasn't there. The lobby was empty. The front door was closed. Nobody. I got on the radio with dispatch. "Dispatch, patch me through to the key holder. I need to advise him on what we found." Dispatch came back, and the response froze me solid. "The key holder is still en route to your location, 5 minutes. But we've already been with the key holder. He let us in." A short pause. Then dispatch said, "Negative. The alarm company only just made contact with the key holder 5 minutes ago. She's driving over now." She. Not he. She. 5 minutes later, the real key holder arrived. A woman. the building's property manager. I described the man who had let us in. 50-ish, salt and pepper hair, dress shirt, slacks, carrying keys. She went pale. The color drained from her face. "That's Dr. Harmon," she said, her voice trembling. "He leased the office at the end of the hall on the second floor. The last office you checked." "So where is he now?" I asked. She looked at me. Her eyes were red. "Dr. Harmon took his own life at his summer home several days ago. He's dead." I stood there, cold to the core. The man who had unlocked the door for us, who had walked with us to the elevator, who had stood there, calm and normal, like a living person. He was dead. I've never gone back to that building. The last story I want to tell you, it's the most terrifying one. Not because a ghost appeared, not because something chased me through the woods, not because doors opened on their own or lights switched positions, but because in this story, I came face to face with it, in the dark, alone, and it breathed right into my ear. After the incident at the medical building, I left the security business. I needed something more normal, a daytime job in an office with coworkers around me, no dark buildings, no empty hallways, no late nights. I found a position at a law firm in downtown Portland, Oregon, a big firm, over 50 employees, housed in a beautiful old building on Morrison Street. The building was well over 100 years old. Brown brick, wide wooden staircases, high ceilings, tall windows overlooking the street. Gorgeous, impressive, classy. The kind of building where you walk in and feel important. I was hired as an administrative assistant. Simple work. Organizing files, making copies, maintaining records, and occasionally going down to the basement to retrieve old case files from the storage room. The basement. I didn't know anything about the basement. Nobody told me. They'd just say, "Kael, go down to the basement and pull the Morrison v. Henderson file, 2018, Cabinet 7. And I'd go. The first time I went down, a coworker came with me. An older woman named Mrs. Pham, Vietnamese, who'd been at the firm for several years. She took me down in the elevator. The doors opened. A long, empty hallway, flickering fluorescent lights overhead. Storage rooms on either side. Rooms packed with metal filing cabinets, stacked cardboard boxes, old dusty papers. The air was thick with the smell of mold and aged paper. That kind of smell you encounter once and never forget. Faintly sweet, stuffy, as if the air had been trapped down there too long and was starting to rot. Mrs. Pham walked me in, and we were in and out fast. Grabbed the file, headed back up. Nothing unusual. I didn't think anything of it. Old basement, damp, dark. Normal for a building that old. The second time, they sent me alone. "Two people don't need to go just to grab one file," one of the lawyers said, smiling lightly. I nodded. Obviously. I was a grown man. I'd survived the house on Elm Creek Road, the haunted forest, the building with the dead doctor. A basement was nothing. I took the elevator down. Doors opened. The empty hallway stretched out before me, silent and still, the fluorescent tubes humming softly overhead. My footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. Tap, tap, tap. The sound bouncing off the walls, making it feel like someone was walking behind me. I entered the storage room. A big space. Maybe 400 square feet. Windowless, sealed. Metal filing cabinets lined both walls. A single fluorescent tube on the ceiling. White, cold light. I started searching through the cabinets, pulling open drawers, flipping through file tabs. Then the light flickered. Off. On. Off. On. Quick. Continuous. I looked up at the bulb. Old fluorescent. Probably on its last legs. Normal. But something. A feeling. An instinct. Made me uneasy. The same feeling I'd had lying in the tent in the forest. The same feeling I'd had standing in that dark hallway at the medical clinic. The feeling that I wasn't alone in this room. I turned around, turned toward the door, and the door slammed shut in my face. Bang! The sound rang through the sealed room. I lunged for the door, grabbed the handle, twisted, pulled. It wouldn't open. I pulled harder, harder, both hands, every ounce of strength I had. The door wouldn't budge, as if someone was holding it from the other side, or from inside, holding it shut, refusing to let me out. I started pounding on the door, fists, kicks, screaming, "Is anyone out there? Open the door! Open the door!" My voice echoed in the sealed room, bouncing off concrete walls, off metal cabinets, sounding like multiple people screaming at once. But no one answered. The basement was too far below the main floor. No one could hear. Then the light went out. Total darkness. Pitch black. The kind of dark where open eyes and closed eyes are the same. No light source, no glow, nothing. Just absolute blackness wrapping around you like a thick, heavy cloth. I panicked. I screamed louder, screamed so loud that my throat tore, so loud that my own ears rang from the sound. Then I heard it, breathing, right next to my ear, left side, very close, so close I could feel it. The warmth, no, the cold, of breath hitting my ear, my neck, my skin, in, out, slow, steady, like someone standing right beside me, standing close, face tilted toward my ear, and breathing. I couldn't move, not paralysis. I was still standing, hands still pressed against the door, but my body refused every command. My brain screamed, "Run," but my legs wouldn't listen. My brain screamed, "Scream," but my mouth clamped shut. Everything froze. In, out, and then something touched my hair, gently, like fingers running softly through my hair, from the top of my head down the back of my neck. Slow, tender, like a caress, like the way a lover runs their fingers through your hair. I blacked out. When I came to, I was on a stretcher. Red and blue lights flashing, paramedics around me, every coworker I knew standing behind them, faces worried. Someone was saying, "He's awake! He's awake!" They took me to the hospital. The doctors said I'd fainted, possibly from a panic attack, possibly from oxygen deprivation in a sealed room. But I knew the real reason. I knew exactly why I passed out. At the hospital, Mrs. Pham came to visit. She sat by my bed, looked at me, and said, "Kael, there's something they should have told you before they hired you." And then she told me everything. 3 months before I was hired, a young woman had worked there. Her name was Sua. She was mean, like me. Fresh out of college, mid-20s, beautiful. Long, black, wavy hair, bright smile, big eyes. She'd been hired as the personal secretary to one of the senior partners, a married American man. His wife was a judge in Multnomah County. Soa and her boss started an affair. It lasted over a year. They'd meet secretly, right there in the building. He sent her roses to the office, locked his office door so they could be alone. And sometimes, Mrs. Pham told me, her voice dropping, they'd go down to the basement, to the storage room, pretending to look for old files. But really, the affair continued until Soa wanted more. She wanted him to leave his wife. She wanted to live with him, to have his children. She was serious. She was truly in love. But he wasn't. To him, Soa was a fling. Young, beautiful, wild. But not someone he'd spend his life with. His wife, the judge, wealthy, powerful, was the one he chose. Soa was nothing compared to her, at least in his eyes. He ended it. One night, he told her, "We're done here." Soa was devastated. She didn't come to work the next day, or the day after. He didn't call, didn't look for her, figured she needed time. Day 3. Nothing. Day 4. A staff member was sent to the basement to retrieve an old file. They found Sua in the storage room, the exact room I had just been locked in. She had hanged herself, rope tied to a pipe on the ceiling. Her body had been there for 4 days. The smell was so bad that nobody went down there for weeks afterward. Mrs. Pam said management tried to bury the story. They hired me and deliberately didn't tell me because they needed someone who'd go down to the basement to pull files. If I'd known, I would never have set foot down there. I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the white ceiling, thinking about the breathing in my ear, thinking about the fingers running through my hair. Gentle, tender, like a caress. Sua. She died in that room, died from despair, died from betrayal, and she was still there, in that dark room, among the dusty filing cabinets, in the damp, stale air. She never left. She couldn't leave. I quit immediately after being discharged. The firm didn't fight it. They were terrified I'd sue. They gave me a severance package, a contract that said they'd pay me a certain amount when I left for a specific reason. Let's just say the package was very generous. So generous that I was able to buy a small house on the outskirts of Portland. They paid me enough money to buy a house, but sometimes, late at night, when I'm lying in my new home, the home that dead money bought, I still hear the breathing, soft, very close, right beside my ear. And I wonder, did Soa follow me home, or was she already here, waiting for me? Thank you for staying until the end of this story. My name is Kael, and everything you just heard, all of it is true. All of it happened to me, to my family, over the course of 30 years. People ask me, are you scared? The answer is yes, every day. But fear isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it reminds you that you're alive, that you're still on this side of the dark. If you liked this story, leave a like and subscribe to Asmer Horror. Drop a comment letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I want to know. I want to know that out there, in the dark, it's not just me. See you in the next story. Turn off the lights, close your eyes, and listen. Can you hear the breathing?